Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. We are your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. My name is Robert Winfrey, and boy, do I hate daylight saving. Can I just say that? This stupid, antiquated practice needs to die. Just go to standard time, which is what we were on, and just let that be what it is all year round. But no, we're still stuck in this. Ugh. They do the lie about how this was, designed for farmers. It wasn't designed for agriculture. It was designed for industry. It was only implemented when the United States kicked up its industrial manufacturing capacity as it entered World War One. Oy, I could really do without it. So if I'm a little bit crankier than usual today, blame the missing hour of sleep. That's all I got for you there. All right. Uh, Thanks for my little rant there. On the agenda today, what do we got? UFC 313 was last night. It was a card. Uh, there's some good, there's some bad, there's some otherwise, so we'll go over all that. Um, we will preview UFC on ESPN Plus 112, which, boy, is that a depressing night of fights. And, there was some news this last week. I think the only thing I'm going to really devote time to here is TKO and Turki Alalshikh trying to get into boxing, and what a what a weird thing that might be. So we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to it. All right. So with that in mind, interact with the product a little bit if you would. Please like, comment, subscribe, star rating, written review, etc., blah blah blah. Y'all know the drill. Really, I just care that you're listening. So thank you very much for that. All right, let's jump into this, shall we? So, UFC 313. Boy, was this kind of a mess in a lot of ways, huh? So, before I get into how the predictions went, I only changed my mind on one thing. And I'll explain some of my logic behind that when I get to it. Well, in a second. But we lost, what, 2 fights the day of the event? We lost the fight between Chris Gutierrez and John Castaneda. Some kind of an illness to Castaneda, and a similar thing for Blades and Kuniev. Apparently there's some kind of a bug that's been going around through the UFC PI. There was a gnarly flu bug that came through my house not that long ago, so I am not here throwing stones. Just, we lost those 2 fights. Not sure anything of value was lost, but they didn't take place. Yeah, so just kind of rough in that respect. Again, not looking forward to either of those, but it pushed back the broadcast start time, and then there was just a bunch of vamping, and, it led to... Whenever these kinds of things happen, it just tends to mean that Daniel Cormier and Joe Rogan do more podcasting than usual. And boy, there were at least 3 fights when they just stopped talking about what was happening to talk about other fights. I mean, which one was it? Yeah, with Carlos Leal and Alex Morono, they spent half of that fight, and it wasn't a long fight, talking about Joaquin Buckley. Like, what are we doing here? Ugh. So, and ESPN Plus, what a terrible platform. Look, I've said before, I have not had the consistent problems other people have had. Okay, I have one of my browsers works pretty well with it. So I think other people might, depending on what browser you're using, it might work better or not as good. Um, I've had problems on occasion, but I've not had the consistent issues that other people have had with it. Full disclosure on my part. But man, when it acts up, this was so bad that people couldn't buy it. Something about the interface just flopped. Dude, if you have ESPN Plus right now, the entire main card for UFC 313 is free. I mean, you have to have the subscription, but it's on demand right now for nothing. If you missed this live and you want to go rewatch any of the main card fights and you have ESPN Plus, it's there. Just because everything just got screwed up so much. Just terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible performance from from ESPN Plus last night. Just awful. This is one of the reasons that I just have to bring this up, man. How is it that, phrase this carefully, if I buy your pay-per-view and your dog crap service craps out on me, I feel zero guilt about finding an alternative viewing method. Okay? I gave you my money, and your service crapped the bed. So, me getting at it another way at that point, I don't feel like there's any impropriety there on my end. Okay? I just don't. So I don't encourage, again, I don't like, don't steal. But if you know that a service is bad and you pay for it anyway, I don't feel bad about having a backup methodology of viewing, especially since I do this for my job. So, how is it that, some of these streaming sites can make this stuff work smooth without issue, and the professional platform for ESPN is still this giant clown fiesta? It boggles the mind. So that was just bad last night from them. I don't know who screwed the pooch, but somebody did. All right. As for predictions, how did we do? So the only one I changed was Bahamondes and Turner. Two reasons for that. One, selfishly, when we lost those other two fights, I suddenly got a little bit worried about what my prediction rate for this one would be. So I hedged. And that's the one I hedged with. The reason I hedged with that and not the main event, um, the closer we got to the fight, the more I started hearing other people when talking about this fight talk about how much Jalen Turner had like fallen out of love with the sport and his motivation wasn't quite right. And MMA is not a sport that you can be half committed to. There's too much risk. There's too much serious physical risk. You're all the way in or you're all the way out on this as a profession. And given his performance and the fact that he retired afterwards, I don't feel badly about changing my mind there. There was just enough smoke that kind of started showing up about his mentality and whatnot that I got cold feet on that pick. Everything else I stuck with, and with that in mind, we went 7-3. So got the main event wrong. I scored that for Pereira. I'll get into that in a second. Um, Again, I switched to Bahamondes. Any of these I'm actually proud of. Most of them not. Just gonna be honest. Um, yeah, Myron Santos probably should not have got the decision against Francis Marshall. Slightly on the other side, though, I kind of do think that, I don't know, I have to double check how I scored the Jordan Santos and Ozzy Diaz fight. It wasn't a great fight. Um, okay, if there is one that I do want to somewhat pat myself on the back over, I'm not going to break my arm doing it here. Um, but getting him onto Lemos, right? A lot of people just looked at, Yasmin Lucinda and went, well, she's younger, she's on a better winning streak. This is the UFC's trying to usher out an older fighter, and to be fair, a 14-year age gap is definitely a big one. But, I just didn't. I'm not like anti Yasmin Lucindo. The way she had to kind of fight around Marina Rodriguez, that you can't fight that way against Lemos, you'll lose, and she did. Probably got this one wrong. Probably should have got Bruno Ferreira over Armen Petrosyan. Look, Petrosyan has a handful of skills, but I think his UFC record is probably not an accident and is probably fairly accurate to his current situation. You could see a little bit of what I kind of thought of how I thought that might go, but Bruno Ferreira was able to just find a couple of good openings and then decent finish out of him. Again, we'll get to that specifically, but yeah, that's kind of where things landed. Two fights didn't happen, of course. So yeah, 7-3. Year to date, that's 66-27 with one draw. I'd like that to be wider. I don't know. It's a little better than 2-1, but I don't know. You'd think I wouldn't be upset about 7-3. Maybe I'm a little sore about it because I probably should have got one of those decisions should not have gone the way that it did, and I just kind of have to deal with the fact that I was the beneficiary from a prediction standpoint of dubious judging, which doesn't happen to me all that often, believe it or not. Not saying never, but it doesn't happen to me that often. So, yeah, 7-3 is a fine enough night for me on that respect. Yeah. So let's get into the fights in particular. Okay, so in the main event, Magomed Ankalaev defeats Alex Pereira via unanimous decision, 2 48-47s and a 49-46. That 49-46 from Sal D'Amato is crap. Ankalaev did not win the fifth round. But Sal D'Amato has been terrible at this for a long time, and no one will just send him to that farm upstate. So, I almost want to just throw his scoring out. I was 48-47 for Ankalaev. To me, this whole fight hinges on the third round. The rest of it's not that hard to score. Rounds 1 and 5 for Pereira, because Ankalaev doesn't do a whole lot offensively during either of those rounds. And rounds 2 and 4 to Ankalaev. He does good work in those rounds. Round 2, he lands the better punches, catches Pereira off balance near the end of it, and let everyone do he was saved by the bell. He wasn't saved by the bell. I've seen guys saved by the bell. He got hit clean, and he lost the round. Not sold on, he was, on the verge of being knocked out, because that's what saved by the bell means. He was caught with a good couple of punches in a bad position. Very, very true. Credit to Ankalaev for that. That doesn't mean you're on the verge of being stopped. We need to stop with the slight nonsense there. And then the fourth round, Ankalaev was just like a tick. Dove into a clinch right away, pushed things to the fence, and anytime Pereira actually got free, went back into the clinch very, very quickly, just gutted his way through that fourth round like that, made sure Pereira did nothing offensive. Not like Ankalaev did anything terribly offensive either, but he did enough to win the round. And then Ankalaev didn't do much in the fifth, and Pereira, I thought, did enough to win the fifth round. So the whole thing hinges on the third, which is actually a fairly close round. I thought Pereira did the better work, but Ankalaev did a lot of forward motion, and that confuses people. And it's not like Pereira did exceptional work in any of these rounds. I thought he did enough to win 3 of them, but one of them was super close. The first round is a lot of nothing. Like, Pereira wins it by landing calf kicks. I don't think he threw a legitimate strike to the head all round. I have to double check that, but I think. He didn't land any even if he threw them. So, this was just a couple of things here in the aftermath. So, Ankalaev winning is not a bad scorecard. It's not a robbery. It's not a bad decision. It's, as a scoring, under the scoring criteria, it's fine. There's an argument to be made that we should maybe score takedown defense more affirmatively. Now, takedown defense in particular is scored more affirmatively by the rule set that one uses. And in general, I find that the superior rule set. Again, this is an argument, and I don't know where exactly I fall on it. To be abundantly clear, if you do score affirmatively defensive grappling like that, there's a much stronger case for Pereira winning the fight. Because Ankalaev went like 0 for 12 or 0 for 13 on takedown attempts. The only takedown in the fight Pereira hit a foot sweep at the end of the third round. Third or fourth. One of them. Hits a really lovely foot sweep. Dumps Ankalaev on his butt, on his back. Just thunk. It's right at the bell, so nothing comes of it, but like when the only takedown in this fight was Pereira's and he blanked Ankalaev, like I can see where some of the argument's coming from. I don't know where I fall on it. It's affirmatively scoring defense is a weird criteria to introduce to scoring. Once again, I'm not saying bad. I'm saying I genuinely don't know where I kind of fall on this. So there's that. I can't call this a disaster for the UFC because the UFC doesn't care about stars. They like having them, but they don't care about them anymore. The UFC has gone out of its way to make the brand the attraction. And that's worked. The problem is that actually limits growth in some respects. Look, they don't care. The UFC cares about the business of the UFC, not the health of the sport. If the sport really craters, then it affects business, but they only care about the health of the sport as it relates to the business. They will facilitate their business interests before the interests of the sport when those two things conflict. So they don't really care that their biggest... Look, Alex Pereira was the MVP of the UFC for 2024. He's one of the only like genuine attraction fighters they have. And so him losing is not going to do them any favors, but they do enough touring that they can gouge prices wherever they go. They can just charge through the nose. And here's the reality. I can sit here and say that they're gouging and that they're overcharging. And I think you can make an argument that in a real sense they are. However, in another sense, if they were really pricing themselves out of this market, people wouldn't be buying tickets. And they're still selling places out. So they're going to keep jacking up prices until people stop paying for them. That's how this goes. And I can be annoyed by that, but I can't fault them for it. That's kind of what you're supposed to do. And if the market and the audience and the consumer isn't responding negatively in a way to disincentivize that behavior, what else are you gonna do? Right? Like, that's kind of just how that's gonna go. It does need to be said, though, that hypothetically the loss of Pereira as, a meaningful champion it's not going to cripple them. It's not going to even hurt them too badly, but it's definitely a loss. Especially losing to a guy, and once again, this is not me yelling about the scoring or Ankalaev winning. I didn't score it for him, but 3-2 for him is perfectly fine as a scorecard. So this is not me complaining about that. It's just to note that the worst... This is a truism of pro wrestling more than MMA, but the overlap between MMA and pro wrestling extends to such a degree that this is true of MMA as well. The worst thing you can have as a fighter in relationship to the crowd is boredom or apathy. That's the worst. So when Ankalaev is not even getting booed during the decision, really, and there's not... Dude, Joe Rogan tried to get him to say something interesting in that post-fight interview, and he got nothing. And the crowd reacted to none of it. Just none of it. They did not care. They were walking out. That's a really less than ideal spot. That's kind of where Bilal Muhammad is, too, for the record. Now, Bilal at least gets a little bit of heat, but that's just kind of the worst thing is apathy, people forgetting you. It's been a meme for a while that Bilal's nickname forever has been remember the name, and no one remembers that he exists half the time. He's the champion now, and he's He's not the most forgotten UFC champion. That's probably Juliana Pena, but he's got to be second, uh, as a general rule. And that's not even me trying to bag on the guy. Like, he won that belt fair and square, and to the extent so did Ankalaev. Whether I agree with the decision or not, it wasn't bad. He didn't cheat. There was no corruption. He won the fight. There's no sense getting up in arms over that. It just somebody started circulating that he got asked at the post-fight presser, like, what are we going to replace Chama with? And he said, how about Big Onk time? And I had a physical revulsion to that. Just, ew. Like, I hate using the word cringe, but golly, I physically cringed at that. Like, just, yeah. So, it's definitely a loss for the UFC, but I doubt it's one that meaningfully affects their bottom line or their schedule or anything like that. A couple of things on the Pereira side of things, and then I'll talk about Ankalaev in a second, because I have a bigger point I want to make regarding him and that division. But this was Pereira's fourth. He was trying to have his fourth title defense in less than 12 months here. That's not a sustainable pace for championship level MMA fighting. There's just too much. Like, the wear and tear and the grind of training will beat you down. Injuries and wear and tear will accumulate. And you'll get a guy who is just a tough stylistic matchup for you anyway, and Ankalaev kind of is. And then if you have an off night, and for as boring as Ankalaev is as a fighter, and look, man, I'm a nerd about most of this stuff. I find Ankalaev deeply uninteresting. And maybe some of that's on me, but that's where I am with that. But to pretend that Pereira didn't turn in a really dull offering of a performance as well is to just ignore reality. He'd only attempted, I think, 5 significant strikes a minute when you average that out for this fight. That's less than half. It's right about half of his previous 2 fights. They were both around 10. So something was off with him. His performance was not good. And you can't really have an off night against a guy who's also really good. And for light heavyweight, Magomed Ankalaev is good. So that's kind of where that is. I don't know what Pereira does next. I don't know if they try for an immediate rematch. They might. I don't know if he only wants to go like looking for big fights. I don't think the rematch between them is a big fight. If he's primarily being driven by money and again, big opportunity, he might still try his hand at heavyweight despite this setback. This does kind of remove the potential of him getting an immediate title shot if John Jones was kind of waiting on this one to see what might happen. But heavyweight, I think, is still an option for him, but trying to maintain the kickboxing-esque schedule of fighting in MMA is just not tenable, especially not at the championship level. You're just going to wind up with an off night like this if you're trying to fight every 3 to 4 months. It just doesn't work. Nobody does it in MMA for a reason. It's not because they're bad fighters. It's because this just doesn't work. So as for Ankalaev, I do need to bring up that this division sucks. Look, I'm not saying that because Magomed Ankalaev won. Like suddenly, oh no, everything changed. It's now terrible. No, I've said for a while it's not a good division. You just have the novelty of a star in Pereira on the top at the top of it. I said the same thing for years about women's bantamweight. It was not a good spot outside of Amanda Nunes being on a historic run. That was it. That was all you had. Then as soon as she left, guess what? You got nothing. You got frickin' Raquel Pennington versus Myra Buena Silva. That fight sucked. You have Raquel Pennington and Juliana Pena. That fight sucked. Like, tell me something interesting about women's bantam. Like, the only thing you've got now is the hope that Kayla Harrison injects a little bit of life into it. And I don't even know how many times Kayla can make that weight cut. I think she probably beats Juliana Pena, but that's sort of beside the point. Like, that division is terrible. Light heavyweight is bad. It's a bad division. You had the novelty of Pereira as the star on top, who was a fun personality and knocked people out. Now you got Ankalaev, who's a decision merchant. I mean, let's just take a look at the light heavyweight rankings, shall we? And just bask in this. So, Ankalaev is champion. Pereira's going to drop to number 1. You got Yuri Prochazka at 2. And Yuri's fun enough, but is anybody getting up for him and Ankalaev? Then you've got Jan Blachowicz, who tried to congratulate Magomed Ankalaev, and Ankalaev, like, shit on him. Because I think whoever read the tweet just doesn't do English comprehension all that well, I guess. I don't know. Jamal Hill at 4, Alexander Rakic at 5. Carlos Olberg might be making some moves. He's at 6. Khalil Roundtree at 7. Nikita Krylov, good God. Nikita Krylov at 8. Volkan Oezdemir 9. Johnny frickin' Walker at 10. Dominic Reyes at 11. Azamat Mirzakhanov at 12. Bogdan Gushkov at 13. Alonzo Menafield. And then Anthony freaking Smith is 15. Tell me that isn't, like, awful. Look, Rakic still has, I think, some potential, but boy, does he have stuff to get figured out. And that knee injury that he suffered when he fought Blachowicz really messed him up. Olberg, again, looking to maybe make some moves and has some potential. Krylov's just kind of been hanging around. Roundtree just had a relatively unearned title shot. He's got a fight coming up, too. Like, there's just nothing there. If Pereira leaves that division, just take him out of it for half a second. Bump somebody else on the roster up. I don't care who. It doesn't matter. That is just depressing. I mean, seriously depressing. And having a deeply uninteresting guy at the top of the weight class just makes it worse. Ugh. So, I don't quite know what's next for him. You got a few options. Again, the immediate rematch with Pereira is an option. Yuri Prochazka is an option. Blachowicz probably needs another win before they potentially do that fight again. And I don't know that anyone wants it. It's not like their first fight was awful. It just kind of got bogged down in the reality of the draw. Olberg, potential, but it's still... He still needs at least one, like, really high-profile win. I don't think he's quite had that yet. And after that, it's just kind of a wasteland. I mean... Anthony Smith is still ranked. Volkan Oezdemir's in the top 10. I mean, the division sucks. It needs to be said out loud every now and then. Even if you like Pereira, even if you liked the gimmick of him, knocking out people, that's fine. You can like that. We can still have a sober assessment of the division, even with a novelty star at the... Novelty's the wrong word, because Pereira's a legitimate champion. When I say novelty, I mean like as an attraction novelty. Right? Stardom is a novelty. So getting the... Even with a star novel attraction like that, or like Amanda Nunes, it's still crap. You just have something that's kind of drawing interest, and now I don't know that you do in that weight class. So take that for what it's worth, and we're going to move on because that fight wasn't a very good fight. Co-main event, Justin Gaethje defeats Rafael Fiziev via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the boards. It's kind of on par with their first fight. Fiziev comes out, and his style is very good early. The problem is it kind of wears down over time because it's very labor intensive is the wrong word, but he uses a lot of explosive energy, a lot of quick twitch stuff, and that just it does slow down over time, kind of no matter who you are. So he had a good first round, and then Gaethje kind of comes back and does his stuff in rounds 2 and 3. He drops Fiziev with an uppercut in the second round, really nice uppercut. Third round, he's able to get, anytime they get into like the pocket and dirty boxing, that's where Gaethje did a lot of good work. Both men were throwing some heavy kicks, both to the leg and to the head, some really nice body kicks from Fiziev. Fiziev just not really throwing uppercuts, which is a weird thing not to do against Gaethje, because half the time when Gaethje enters, he bends over at the waist, tries to, feed his shoulder into lead the exchange, which is a very boxing heavy thing to do. And even boxers don't do it all the time because they get uppercutted. But I don't know. Maybe Fiziev had some kind of read on it. Probably helped that he was only doing that when they were open stance, when Fiziev was southpaw. I don't think he did it quite as much when Fiziev was orthodox. But this was your fight of the night, and I have no problem with that. This was a good fight. After the fact, Gaethje was asked, so do you really think you deserve the title shot over Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan? His response was, feel free to argue that amongst yourselves. I just want to fight for the belt. Respect it. He got asked about a third fight with Dustin Poirier, said he's not interested, partially because, and I quote, I don't think either of our families deserve that. And much as I would like a trilogy fight between them, I can't fault his logic there. So this was kind of a holding pattern win for Gaethje when all things are said and done. I don't know. Lightweight's in a weird spot. You've got Ilia Topuria moving up. You've got Arman Tsarukyan, who lost out on his title shot, and he'll have to win it back. You've got Poirier again kind of looking for his retirement fight. You've got Charles Oliveira maybe still trying to make some noise about getting another fight with Islam Makhachev. Like, lightweight needs a little bit of clarity, and this was a good win for Gaethje, but I don't think this puts some big mandate on him to be the next guy. He might still be the next guy. That's not outside the realm of possibility. But I don't think you come out of this fight with yes, it has to be you. It could be you, but has to be is a very, very strong sentiment that I don't think is prevalent here at the moment. But good fight. Somebody did Justin Gaethje's got 13 bonuses in 13 fights, maybe 14 and 14 now. And he's made $950,000 in bonus money. Guys, one, I'm happy for Gaethje, right? But we're really celebrating this. So it's taken him, his UFC debut, 2017. So July of 17. So we're coming up on 8 years. So it's taken him 7.5 years, a boatload of wear and tear training, a lot of head trauma, to make pre-tax what some bench warmer in the NBA or NFL makes in 2 weeks. And the UFC, yeah. I just have to say that out loud on occasion, because the UFC is looking to renegotiate. They're looking for they're going to be looking for a new broadcast partner. And they're looking to get a better deal than what they had, and what they had was a lot of money. And what they're looking for is going to be more. So they're still looking to increase, and they're still paying fighters the same old bonus they've been paying them forever. And this, multi-billion-dollar sporting league, part of a multi-billion-dollar live entertainment conglomeration, pays its high-end fighters less than you make as a rookie in the NBA. I mean, Connor was out there just lying through his teeth about what he made when they released the payout for the that big boxing card, the Final Crescendo or whatever they called it. He said, like, boy, I made more money for my last fight in the UFC than all these guys combined. And no, you didn't. Just no, you didn't. I also know you didn't because here's a fun fact for you. So Forbes did their highest paid sports athletes of the last, 100 years or so? Or the 100 highest paid sports athletes of the last decade or two. They did their big thing. Like they usually do like, hey, here's the highest paid sporting athletes of the last year. They did their big like, here's who's made the most for the last like decade. There were 3 boxers on that list. One of them is actually Naoya Inoue, who hasn't fought I don't think he's ever fought in the US, maybe once, certainly not in a long time. That dude's making money and good for him. Inoue's awesome. But there's 3 or there's 4 boxers on that list. 0 MMA fighters on that list. Look this up if you think I'm lying. 0. Yeah. Keep telling yourself lies about secret payouts from the UFC. Just keep banging that drum. Ugh. Anyway, moving on. At lightweight, Ignacio Bahamondes defeated Jalen Turner with a triangle choke, 229 of the first. Jalen Turner looked kind of checked out in this fight. Did okay on the feet. They tied up. Bahamondes kind of just pulled guard. Wound up catching a pretty decent triangle choke. Got the finish. Good for Bahamondes, who I still think fairly highly of. Turner retired after the fight. Dude, if he's fallen out of love with this, yeah, get out before you get hurt. Is kind of the way that has to go. And that's brutal, and I'm sorry to say it because I don't have anything against Jalen Turner, but that's reality. Amanda Lemos defeated Yasmin Lucindo via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the boards. This fight sucked. I think there were 12 significant strikes landed all fight. I don't think Lucindo landed a single significant strike in the first 2 rounds. I mean, her output was just pathetic. For someone who was supposed to be like, this was your big coming out party. Terrible fight. And kicking off the main card, Mauricio Rufy killed Bobby Green with a wheel kick at 2:07 of the first. Good grief. Showed the left hook to draw out a parry or a block from Green, then spun through with his gorgeous wheel kick against the fence. Turned Bobby Green into hit him with those ragdoll physics. This is probably your knockout of the year. I'm not going to say it's guaranteed, but this was pretty spectacular. So, good one there from Rufy. On the prelims, Joshua Van defeated Ray Saruya via unanimous decision, 30-27 across the boards. There was some fun grappling from Saruya in the second round. He hit a nice drop Seoinage. There was a pretty decent foot sweep. I think he had some kind of lateral drop he had or something near to it. He just couldn't keep Van on the ground and get his chain get his chain work actually going. And Saruya's skill set is lopsided in favor of freestyle wrestling attacks and then trying to grapple you on the ground. He just doesn't have the ability to throw a lot of punches, to chain his punches together with his strikes. And while I like a lot of what he can do in the grappling, he's got to get some better control and pinning work going on the ground than he has right now. I'm not going to judge him too harshly. He took this on short notice, though, so take that for what it's worth. Good win for Joshua Van, who should probably be fighting somebody ranked next. Bruno Ferreira caught Armin Petrosian with a triangle armbar, 4:27 of the second. Not a whole lot there. Carlos Leal beat the brakes off of Alex Morono. TKO'd him against the fence, 4:16 of the first. This was not close. Leal came out there and just no respect, no fear, marched him down, beat him up. Uh, Leal kind of got a raw deal on his UFC debut with the decision. He just stormed through this one, man. Myron Santos defeated Francis Marshall via split decision, a 30-27 for Marshall and then 229-28 for Santos. I scored this for Marshall. I didn't go 30-27. I gave Santos the second. I thought a lot of Marshall's offense was a bit more muted in that round, and his takedowns didn't amount to as much. Third round was relatively close. I still kind of thought Marshall probably should have taken it, but commentary buried that decision, by the way. Yeah, again, I kind of thought Marshall won, but when you understand, dude, Joe Rogan, bless him, but when he got asked, like, yo, so what did you think of that decision after he got done interviewing, Santos said, no, I thought Marshall won. I mean, he dropped him. Yeah, he did in the first round. And, he kind of controlled him, yeah, in the first round. Like, if you scored this fight as a whole instead of round by round, yeah, Marshall wins. I think that's fairly easy to score. Getting locked into the mindset that, well, some of these moments really matter, like, no, they matter for the round. That's it. Scoring of these things gives you, each 5-minute segment is its own fight, is how the scoring works. Whatever happened in the first no longer matters in the second. I don't know. People struggle with that concept. And kicking everything off, Ozzy Diaz went the distance with Jordan Santos. Wins a unanimous decision, 29-28. I think I scored this for Santos, but I'm not up in arms over it. Was an okay fight. Just sloppy MMA boxing for the most part. Nothing special. All right, bonuses I mentioned. Gaethje and Fiziev fight of the night. Performances went to Bahamondes and Rufi. Zero issues with that. You could have gone... look, the other options were... The only other two finishes were Ferreira and Leal. And I agree generally that Rufi and Bahamondes were more impressive. But my full report is in the MMA Zone at 411mania.com in the MMA Zone, so go give that a read if you are so inclined. Thank you all very much. I appreciate the heck out of that, and sorry, I am tired, and I am fumbling, typing my way through this. Okay, UFC on ESPN plus 112. They will be back in the warehouse, as I previously mentioned, and I don't know what to tell you guys about this. It's just not a very good card. I looked at it last week. So your main event is the rematch between Marvin Vettori and Roman Dolidze. These two met before in 2023, and Vettori won a unanimous decision. I can't imagine caring about this rematch. The problem is, this isn't a problem. So, Vettori's been out for a little bit, if memory serves. Yeah, he last fought in June of 23, losing a unanimous decision to Jared Cannonier. Yeah, he missed all of 24. He only went 1-1 in 2023, the aforementioned win over Dolidze in a 3-round decision, and then losing the 5-round decision to Cannonier. He had some kind of an injury that forced him out of a fight with Brendan Allen. So he's been out for a minute or two. But Roman Dolidze, coming off a 2-fight winning streak, wins over Anthony Smith and then Kevin Holland. Okay. If this were another 3-round fight, I would pretty easily favor Vettori, even with the layoff. 5 rounds does complicate that a little bit. Vittori's just a tough guy to really kind of get a handle on. He's just, good enough at a bunch of different things to make life difficult for the vast majority of the division. But he's not good enough at those things to really pose a problem to guys like Robert Whittaker, Israel Adesanya, etc., right? The odds are with, how heavy are the odds with Vettori? Not super heavy, minus 140-ish. That's probably about right. I'm going to pull the trigger on Dolidze. The 5 rounds gives me a little bit of pause. Let me asterisk this. I'm going to go with Vettori, but I want to watch each of their last, 2 fights at some point during the week and maybe rethink that. For the moment, I'll go with the odds, and we'll just see what happens. Next up at welterweight, Chidi Njokuani and Elijah Zaleski dos Santos. So, Njokuani's won his last 2, a split decision over Reese McKee, then he got a win over Jared Gooden. Neither were super impressive, but they got him back on the winning side of things after a bad run at middleweight. Dos Santos is 38. Beat Zach Scroggin his last time out. Lost to Randy Brown before that. Dos Santos is a little bit over the hill. Not hugely. He can still give you some problems. He's favored here. If he can maintain the form he had in his last fight, I know Zach Scroggin is not nearly the same level, level of opposition here, but he looked really rough in that Randy Brown fight, and then finally kind of looked a little bit revitalized. If he can maintain that form, he probably wins this. Do I think he can maintain that kind of consistency at this point, though? Njokuani doesn't react all that well to being pressured, and his upright stance is going to leave some openings for some of the stuff that Capoeira dos Santos does. Yeah, let me rock with Dos Santos, I guess. Next up at featherweights, Young-Woo Choi and Kevin Vallejos. Choi not had the best UFC run of late. 1-4 in his last 5. Losses to Alex Caceres, Josh Culibao, Michael Trezano, and coming off a loss to Steve Garcia. Somewhere in there he beat Jarno Aarons. This is Sting, right? Yeah. He might be in win-or-go-home territory against Vallejos. Speaking of whom, Argentinian, 14-1, 3-fight winning streak. This is his UFC debut. They might be looking to cash Choi out of the UFC and giving a Contender Series guy a more winnable fight. Odds are really with Vallejos. Yeah, I think Choi might just be a little bit past it. There we go. I may regret that one, though. Look, anytime you get plus or minus 500 on a guy making their debut off the Contender Series, you're courting disaster. Lightweight next, Alex Hernandez and Kurt Holloway. Hernandez coming off a split decision win over Austin Hubbard. Can't remember if I agreed with that or not. Holloway, 1-1 since returning to the UFC last year, coming off a win over Kainan Kruchevsky. This is probably Hernandez. He's a slightly more proven fighter. But man, does he both fade and have very weird fights. I will not be surprised if he loses that one. Bantamweight next, Damon Blackshear and Cody Gibson. Okay. So Gibson on a 2-fight winning streak, wins over Brian Kelleher and Chad Anheliger. Blackshear's definitely more talented than those guys. Blackshear 15-7-1. He's had a really weird UFC run, if memory serves. Yeah, he's 3-3-1. Coming off a win over Cody Stamann. Lost 2 before that to Mario Bautista and Montel Jackson. Yeah, he's just been a little bit all over the place. Gibson, I forgot to mention it. He's 21-10. The odds really like Blackshear. I don't know, man. Like he's got the potential, but he's also lost some weird fight. Like he's made some very weird decisions. Am I just gonna trust? Yeah, all right. I'll trust the odds makers to know something I don't there, but I would not feel good about betting on that fight. Then at bantamweight we have Su Young Yu and AJ Cunningham. So let's take a look at these gentlemen. Yu 14-3. Had a pretty good UFC debut, if memory serves. Yeah, beating Jalesi Baranjong. That was I think that was what actually won that road to UFC. So anyway, he's fighting again. Cunningham, 11-4. 0-1 in the UFC. Dropped his UFC debut to Ludovic Klein. Had a fight with Morgan Chartier fall out. He's been out for over a year, a little bit over a year. This might be you. Okay, I'm gonna pick him, but man, those odds are a lot. They're like -700 on you, and that's an odd one. I don't think Cunningham is that out of his depth here. On the prelims, oh God help us, Waldo Cortez Acosta and Ryan Spann at heavyweight. So Cortez Acosta, last fought in May of 24. When he out-wrestled Robelis to Spain for 3 rounds. That fight sucked. He's on a 3-fight winning streak overall, whereas Spann choked out Ovince St. Preux his last time out. Was on a 3-fight losing streak before that. Losses to Nikita Krylov, Anthony Smith, and Bogdan Gushkov. Is this his heavyweight debut? I think it is in the UFC. Yeah, he's been at middleweight and light heavyweight until now, and now he's trying his hand at heavyweight? I don't know that that goes well for him. Look, I'm not exactly the biggest believer in Waldo Cortez Acosta, but I don't know that a move to heavyweight is going to revitalize Spann's career. And I'll go with old Where's Waldo there. Strawweight, Stephanie Luciano and Sam Hughes. Let's see, Sam Hughes coming off a split decision over Victoria Dudakova. I don't remember if I agreed with that one. I might have, but I don't remember. And she's been very up and down in the UFC. She's kind of there. Luciano, 6-1-1. 3-fight winning streak, including a successful UFC debut against Talita Alankar. I don't know. Hughes has done okay recently, but I don't know that I can just like trust her to actually maintain consistency. So I'm gonna go with Luciano. All right. Next up, Dr. Nergoza, Nergozoy. Where is this gentleman from? This is light heavyweight. He's taking on Brenderson Ribeiro. So he's from Kazakhstan. I'm gonna go with Nergoze until I hear otherwise. He's 10-0. This is his UFC debut. It's probably means he won on the Contender Series. Yes, indeedy. That's exactly what he did. Knocking out a Polish gentleman based on his last name. Yep. No offense intended, but you start to spot the spelling patterns for those. Hiberio, 16-7. Oh, he's what? Yeah, 1-2 in the UFC, coming off a split decision win over Kyle Machado. Lost to to Zhang Mingyang and Magomed Gaziasulov before that. They're probably trying to give the new guy that they like a slightly easier win. Hiberio is pretty distinctly unimpressive, so let's go with Ngozi. Ngozi. And you are Gozhay. Zay? Sure I spelled that right. Yes, I did. Okay. You start to see why I called this card not very good. Bantamweight next, Carlos Vera and Josias Musasa. I'm going to need a second on this one. Okay, so Musasa is 8-0. He fights out of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. This is his UFC debut. He had a split decision win on the Contender Series. Boy, they'll let anyone in off of that show these days. They can afford at 10-10 to let anybody take at least one fight, I guess. Vera is from Ecuador. He is 11-4. 0-1 in the UFC. Lost to Rinya Nakamura February of last year. He's been out for a minute. I'm probably going with Vera. Odds are super with Musasa. You know what? I'm going with Vera anyway. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm taking one of these. I think I've almost only picked favorites, so if I'm going to pick an underdog, I may as well pick a big one in a fight that probably shouldn't have odds that lopsided. Flyweight next, Daniel Barres and Andre Lima. What do we have here? Lima, 10-0. 2-0 in the UFC. 3-0, sorry. Coming off the win over Felipe Dos Santos. He missed weight in that Mitch Raposo fight, and that didn't sit well with a lot of people. I mean, his UFC debut was the first time somebody got DQ'd for biting when Igor Severino bit him. Barres is Spanish, 17-6. I think he's 1-1. Yeah. Lost his UFC debut to Jafel Filho. That's a loss that's aging fairly well. Beat Victor Altamirano his last time out. Probably Lima. I think I've generally been a little bit more impressed with him. So I'll go with Lima. Alright, let's see. Women's bantamweight. Josiane Nunes and Priscilla Cachoeira. Dear, why? Just why? Nunes on a 2-fight losing streak to Chelsea Chandler and Jacqueline Cavalcante. That Cavalcante fight should not have been a split decision. It was not that hard to score, but some idiots think walking forward swinging punches that miss win you rounds. Looking at you, Sal D'Amato, you semi-sentient can of tomato paste. You've been downgraded from soup to paste. Cachoeira on a 2-fight losing streak. Submission losses to Miranda Maverick and Jasmine Jasdavicius. This fight is not going to be good. Who could possibly care about this? Odds are with Nunes. Yeah, that's fair. I don't pick Priscilla Cachoeira to win fights. I don't think she should be in the UFC. Lightweight next, Evan Elder and Markel Medeiros. Wow, we went from... oh, that fight fell through? Looks like it fell through. Okay. I'm going to assume that fell through for the sake of argument in case it didn't. Looks like it did. Let me throw that down here a little further and just throw a question mark around that one. I'll pick Evan Elder. Then we have, let's see, Eunice Dubin and Carly Judas. Okay, so Dubin is Venezuelan, 6-0. This is her UFC debut. Judice, I can't remember if she prefers that pronounced, is 3-2. Lost her UFC debut in a split decision to Gabriela Fernandez. Can't remember if I agreed with that or not. I think I did, but there was something weird about how that fight ended, like down the stretch, how that changed. Odds are with Judas. Sure. Why not? All right, and that's UFC on ESPN plus 112. It is a dog of a card. Hopefully the action makes up for its unappealing nature on paper, and this Saturday in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com, I will be covering it. So please do stop by, say hello for that. I always appreciate it. Okay. So let's talk TKO and Turki Alalshikh wanting to get into the boxing business. There was an announcement. Dana White, Turki Alalshikh said they want to start a boxing promotion. And they're coming for everybody's head. Blah, blah, blah. Couple of things about this. So there's only one interview that Dana White did in the wake of this announcement that's worth anything. The rest of it is crap. It's the usual, we're going to bring the UFC model and we're going to make it happen and the best are going to fight the best and blah, 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 and shut up. It's nothing. It's soundbite. Again, it's nothing. There was one interview he did, I think it was with Dan Rayfel, and he said, yeah, what we're proposing is technically illegal, how we want to do it. I don't want to deal with the sanctioning bodies. I want to make our own titles. That's literally illegal. It is a matter of federal law that is illegal. You can't overturn that with an executive order. You actually have to get the legislative branch to legislate. Good luck with that. Whatever your political affiliation happens to be, the legislative process in the United States moves like molasses to the extent that it moves at all. And sometimes that's to our benefit, sometimes that is to our detriment. I'm going to leave that alone. He also said, we're basically, we're going to try and do a promotion. We're going to focus more on younger guys. We're going to try to do the best fighting the best, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what comes of this, if anything. I think you'd be foolish to discount it. But there's a bunch of things in place that, again, literally make it illegal for the UFC, whatever this organization winds up being, to try and just port over the UFC's business model of our titles are the only ones that matter. Screw you. Screw your sanctioning bodies. Screw your rankings. We'll do them in-house. We will commission shop ad nauseum. And by the way, commissions, if you don't play ball with us, then you're not getting UFC events, you're not getting WWE events, you're not getting anything else that we bring to the table. So how about you play nice and sanction power slap and all that crap? Guys, the UFC model is terrible for fighters. Pardon me. It's exploitative. They try to keep what they pay fighters at less than 15% of yearly revenue. And some of the stuff they include in fighter compensation is really whacked. For a while they included USADA. We're paying for USADA. That's part of fighter compensation. The hell it is. You'd have a better chance of saying that the overhead for the UFC PI is fighter compensation because they say anyone can come use it. That actually you could make an argument for. They probably do, and that's not a cheap facility to run. So I'm sure that's part of what they say. Yeah, boy, that number, man, it's creeping closer to 18%. Yeah, how about if we cut out what you spend for the PI? Well, in that case, back down to 12. I don't know. That's what they do. We know what this is. This is not complicated. And trying to port that over to boxing needs more exploitation. Sure. We'll keep an eye on this going forward, but man, was this a depressing thing to see announced. For a lot of reasons. All those boxing promoters, by the way, who are willing to sell their souls off to Turki Alalshikh is like boxing Santa Claus. Boy, those chickens are coming home to roost, are they not? Oh, we don't care about sports washing. We'll just let this powerful figure with enough money to buy everything and make everything happen come in to play around, and then when he muscles all of us out of this, he's going to try and do here, then, who could have foreseen this coming? I will shed not a single tear for those people. Not a single one. Alright, again, there's not enough known beyond they're trying to do this to actually, get into anything, so we're going to leave that there, and let's check the social medias, then we'll do plugs and get out of here if nothing new is broken. Oh, I forgot to mention this earlier, I'll do it briefly. UFC 313 on the broadcast, they announced that Robbie Lawler is going into the Hall of Fame in the modern wing. Former welterweight champion, two of the best welterweight title fights in UFC history, if not all of MMA history. Veteran, fighter's fighter. Bless him, he absolutely deserves it. Watching him get emotional as that announcement was made, because he's not a very emotional guy for the most part, but 1,000,000% deserved. He's already in the fight wing once for the fight with Roy McDonald. He will get in again for the fight with Carlos Condit. I have no doubt about that. That's actually the better fight of the two. 1,000,000% glad to see Robbie Lawler go in there. He deserves that unequivocally. Okay, plugs. I just got done covering AEW's Revolution. Mostly pretty good. Few iffy spots, but kind of how that goes. This week I will be covering WWE SmackDown on Friday, UFC on ESPN Plus 112 on Saturday. Monday on Damn You Hollywood, myself and Mark Radlich, we will be reviewing Mickey 17. Bong Joon-ho is kind of a one-trick pony, but it's a decent trick at least. So we'll talk about that. The good, the bad, and the otherwise. It's getting very good reviews in general, but, neither Mark nor I are afraid to go against the grain and the flow if we disagree with it. So tune in for that if you're interested in my ramblings on movies. Last week on Damn You Hollywood, it was me, Alexis Hana, and Jason Teasley, and we reviewed The Monkey, Osgood Perkins' latest flick based on the Stephen King short story. You know what? I had a good time with it. So go listen to our review and decide if you might be interested in that movie. It's if you like horror, especially horror with a really good, unpretentious sense of wicked humor, almost like Looney Tunes-esque in some ways. I think you'll enjoy The Monkey. So I think that's it for me this week. Let me double check that real fast. No, that's not me. That's not me. Okay. Nope, that is it for me for this upcoming week. Next week we'll be back here to review UFC on ESPN Plus 112, and we will be previewing UFC on ESPN Plus 113, headlined by Leon Edwards and Sean Brady. They will be in the O2 Arena in London, so they actually had to try to put together a card because they had to sell tickets. What's on that card? Blachowicz and Olberg is interesting. Nelson and Holland is iffy. Okay, this is not a deep card. Nathaniel Wood and Morgan Charrier, actually. Okay, that's got some potential. No, don't care about Lonnie Kavanaugh. Don't care about Marcin Tybura. Now, most of this is just the usual UK crowd showing up, but there's a few things in there worth half paying attention to, so full preview next week. All right. That's it for me for this week. Thank you all very much for listening. I always appreciate it, so thank you. Of course, anything you can do to help the show, always also appreciated. Until next time, stay safe out there and continue to be well, be safe, and behave.